Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Buster Blader Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile for August 2024. The Buster Blader deck has been one of the more requested updates that I make for deck profiles on the channel. It's definitely a fun one, being the Dragon Slayer aspect of a deck that focuses on being able to make use of your opponent's dragon monsters to summon out some of your bigger extra deck boss monsters, including the fusion of the Buster Blader, and then the synchro evolution of the Buster Whelp that we also run as added backup for this dragon slaying swordsman deck. It's really fun, and as always I try to stay with the pure variant of the deck just for a more fun take for the deck. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the main deck monsters, we run 2 copies of Buster Blader. It gains 500 attack for each dragon-type monster your opponent controls or in their graveyard. So this is just more of the card needed for a lot of your different setup in the deck, and it can be summoned out quite easily with some of our other Buster Whelp monsters that we run in the deck. But once again, you also need it to be able to summon out our Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman, our main go-to boss monster in the extra deck for Buster Blader as well. But once again, I feel we only need 2 copies. 3 can really end up as a dead draw in your hand, but also as more of an added resource to be searched out. We do run 1 additional copy of Buster Blader, the Destruction Swordmaster, for, I guess you could say, the 3rd copy of Buster Blader. This card's name becomes Buster Blader while it is on the field or in the graveyard. If a monster your opponent controls is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can target one of those destroyed monsters, equip it to this card. Once per turn, you can send 1 monster card you control that is equipped to this card to the graveyard to destroy all monsters your opponent controls with the same type as that monster. So you want to make sure that your opponent's monsters will be dragon type, like the monster that we will have equipped onto our Buster Blader card. And then also just being able to have more of an equip option of the card that you destroyed of your opponent's monsters to hopefully send the same variant of that monster also to the graveyard. For the Buster Dragons, we're running 3 copies of Buster Whelp, the Destruction Swordsman. When this card's normal summon, you can add 1 Destruction Sword card from your deck to your hand, except for Buster Whelp, Destruction Swordsman. You can only use one of the following effects of Buster Whelp once per turn, and only once that turn. You can tribute this card to special summon 1 Buster Blader from your hand or graveyard. This is what I meant by the easy access to your Buster Blader boss monster. And if this card's in your graveyard and you control Buster Blader, you can discard 1 Destruction Sword card to special summon this card, giving you that resource back onto the field as well, because one of our link monsters, being Protector Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman, is a very easy monster to summon out, just needing 2 monsters to make it. So having this resource just be able to come back onto the field means we can then use it for either the fusion play, being the dragon monster to use with Buster Blader, the tuner monster to go for the synchro summon of Buster Dragon, and then the link play also is that additional resource. A definite 3 of just for its versatility and ease to summon onto the field. We're also running 2 copies of Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. You can target 1 Buster Blader you control, equip this monster from your hand or your side of the field to that target. While this card's equipped to a monster, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck, and while this card's equipped to a monster, you can special summon the equipped card. You can only use this effect of Dragon Buster Destruction Sword once per turn, but being able to restrict your opponent for summoning from the extra deck can be a big weakness for a lot of decks, depending on what you play against. But this card can easily be set up as well. That's why we're only running the 2 of copies in the deck. With the same for the other Buster Destruction Swords we run, the 1 copy of Robot Buster Destruction Sword and the 1 copy of Wizard Buster Destruction Sword, being able to equip these cards as well. And then your opponent cannot activate cards in their graveyard effects with your Wizard Buster, and then also spell and traps that are always face up on the field cannot activate their effects for the Robot Buster. More specific cards, but still pretty fun and good to run as added backup equips for our Buster Blader monsters also. And I also run the 1 copy of Dark Magician. With the Dark Magician, we have other fusion options available to us in the deck as well, including the Dark Paladin, being a fusion monster for the Buster Blader in the deck, to be able to use the Destruction Swordsman fusion for that card as well. Can be an added option, but also with all the dragon monsters, we do have access to Red Eye's Dark Dragoon, which I've decided to run in this version of the deck since the last update with just how much easier it's been available to pull since the Rarity Collection 2. And then also, I was running cards like Jester Convit as easy special summon cards, but going against our opponent as well, I find a small Bestial Engine very, very useful, giving you another dragon resource while being able to disrupt your opponent's graveyard plays as well. On top of that is very, very useful. You have Magnamut for the search, Druid's Worm for the extra deck resource, Serenir for the send setup, and then the Baldrake for the additional extra deck shuffle back power. One of each I think is fine, because then once again you also have your own monsters to be able to banish if need be from the graveyard for their special summon onto the field. For the spells, we run one copy of Destruction Swordsman Fusion. It's really all we need. This card can be recycled from the graveyard. It can be searched off of Buster Whelp. You fusion summon one fusion monster that lists Buster Blader as material from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or either side of the field as fusion materials. If this card's in your graveyard, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard to add this card to your hand. So there, you have more add back power on top of the monster that can just search it to your hand as well. And then once you have it, unless your opponent were to, let's say DD Crow it, then you can always add back to your hand also. I also run 3 copies of Where Art Thou just for more level 1 search power. If we have a level 1 monster on the field, like our Buster Whelp, we can use Where Art Thou, then to add cards like our Dragon Buster or vice versa, depending on which one we want to go for. I also run the 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods, sending our Destruction Swordsman Fusion to the graveyard, discarding another card, adding it back to our hand. Another easy search for the spell. With some of our one-ofs, for more fusion options, the 1 copy of Red Eyes Fusion to go for the Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. For the summon of that monster from the extract, using cards from the hand or field as fusion material. So very, very useful for send and setup once again. For the cards, just listing the Red Eyes monster as material, using monster from your hand or deck or field as fusion material, also for that summon. And then the 1 copy of Instant Fusion and the 1 copy of Ready Fusion, because we can grab some fusion targets from the extra deck and then have them be used for the extra deck source as well to summon out Protector Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman. Once again, this is a very easy summon to make since it just needs 2 monsters. And also the 1 copy of Call by the Grave, the 1 copy of 1 for 1, the 1 copy of Monster Reborn, and the 1 copy of World Legacy Succession for the rest of the one-of spells that we run in the deck. We have Easy Link Arrows once again, and then just resources grabbed back from the graveyard, the level 1 monsters to summon out, and then shutting down any of our opponent's hand traps that would stop us from searching or special summoning. With the last of the spells, I'm really fond of using Forbidden Droplet. You have the equip option with your Buster monsters, so then you can send them from your spell and trap card zone as a means to, stop an opponent's additional card effect on the field and then just be able to grab them back again the following turn. For the traps, I run 3 copies of Prologue of the Destruction Swordsman. Send 1 Destruction Sword card and 1 Buster Blader monster from your deck to the graveyard, except for Prologue of the Destruction Sword. To special summon 1 Buster Dragon from your extra deck or graveyard, but destroy it during the end phase of the next turn. You can banish this card from your graveyard this turn. Destruction Sword cards you control cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. You can only activate 1 Prologue of the Destruction Swordsman per turn, so being able to either summon out or get back our Buster Dragon onto the field is why I like this card. It sets up the Destruction Sword card and the Buster Blader from your deck to the graveyard. So then you have those monsters basically played into the Synchro Summon of this card as well, while thinning down the resources in the main deck. And also 2 copies of Destruction Sword Memories. Discard 1 Destruction Sword card to special summon 1 Buster Blader from your deck. You can banish this card from your graveyard to fusion summon 1 Buster Blader to the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman from your extra deck by banishing the fusion material. So almost like a trap miracle fusion for your Buster Blader fusion options in the deck as well. So being a trap, you have the option to summon it on your opponent's field, and depending on the other trap we may have, which we'll get to in a sec, can really help to disrupt some of their other plays. The 1 copy of Destruction Sword Flash, this may honestly be a 2 of. If I were to do so, you can maybe drop down 1 of the copies of Foolish Burial Goods for a 2nd copy of this card. And also with this card just being able to have more of a banish option for our opponent's monsters on their field. With the last of the traps, 3 copies of DNA Surgery. I really love running this card. It's so much fun to play in the deck just to make use of with our Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman, because with this card you change all dragon monsters your opponent control to defense. Also, all dragon monsters in your opponent's possession cannot activate their effects. So if you call Dragon with DNA Surgery and you have this card on the field, it really is just a more limited for your opponent's skill drain on the field for your opponent's cards. And that is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck. For the fusion monsters, I maybe want to run 2 copies of Buster Blader to the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman because we have the trap option for the fusion along with the main spell. If you were to do so, you can drop down some of your link monsters in the extra deck, but I also have this card, the Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, and the 1 Dark Paladin, which you could also, maybe take out the Dark Paladin if you want for a second copy of this card. We've already gone over the fact that it stops your opponent. It gains 1,000 attack and defense for each dragon monster your opponent controls or in their graveyard, so the more they have set up, the stronger this card gets. Red Eyes Dark Dragoon being its own negate to use with Dark Magician, and we're running Dark Magician, so might as well have the Dark Paladin summon to be able to use as well, since we can fuse Buster Blader and Dark Paladin together with the Dark Magician using this card. And when a spell card is activated, you can discard 1 card to negate the activation and destroy it. So you have a spell negate on top of some of the other cards we run in the deck also. For the instant fusion plays, the 1 Dragoness Wicked Knight and the 1 Carbonalo Warrior, easy instant fusion and ready fusion targets. For the synchros, the 1 copy of Buster Dragon needing 1 tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monsters. All monsters your opponent control become dragon type once per turn. If you do not control a Buster Blader monster, you can target 1 Buster Blader in graveyard, special summon it, and once per turn during your opponent's turn, you can target 1 Buster Blader monster you control, equip it with 1 Destruction Sword monster from your graveyard. This is a quick effect. This is what I like about the recycle power with Droplet, being able to have that Buster Blader monster on the field, equip it with a Destruction Sword as well. Once you've restricted your opponent, if they try to go for another monster effect negation, you can then send the Droplet, sending that card, and then use Buster Dragon to then equip it back onto the monster again. And then for more synchros, the 1 copy of Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend, the 1 Scrap Dragon Destruction plays more in line with these cards. Also, with our link monsters being 1 copy of Protector Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman. If it's link summon, you can send 1 Destruction Sword card from your deck to the graveyard, so it works well with the Buster Dragon equip once again for this card. And then being able to special summon 1 Buster Blader monster from your hand, giving you a bigger warrior resource onto the field as well. At the end of your battle phase, if your opponent controls no monsters, you can target 1 Buster Blader you control that did not declare an attack this turn and inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's attack. So the big play comes down with this is for the fact that your Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman, cannot attack your opponent directly. So with this, you use cards like your go-to trap lineup, depending on what you use on the field. One of them being the Destruction Sword Flash, banishing your opponent's monsters. So then, with all the cards set up in their graveyard, you can then just use this card to inflict damage to your opponent equal to the attack, which can be some pretty heavy damage depending on how big your Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman, is on the field. You go easy to effect once per turn, but still a great restriction, but still worth it in the long run. And then the 1 Heretic Seal of Heavenly Spheres, the 1 Relinquished Anima, the 1 Nightmare Unicorn, and the 1 Access Code Talker for all of the link monsters. And for the Xyz monsters, 1 Big Eye and 1 Sylvan Princess Bride. More restrictive for when we can go into the Xyz monsters, but it does pop up from time to time. And for some of the go-to plays in the deck, setting up your monsters is a big part of the deck. So normal summoning out Buster Whelp, the Destruction Swordsman, I would say starts off a good number of plays that you want to be able to perform in the deck to begin with. So summoning this card out, you can add a Destruction Sword card from your deck to your hand, except for Buster Whelp, the Destruction Swordsman. So depending on the Destruction Sword card you want, you can go for your fusion play with Memories. You can go for your prologue of the Destruction Swordsman to set up your Buster Whelp on the field. And this comes down to also if you have the means to search out your go-to spell for your fusion of Buster Blader as well. If not, you can always just add this card to your hand, because then you have the option to fuse, and if you have your Buster Blader in your hand, you have that added search power as well, but also the means to special summon out by tributing out your Buster Whelp, and then being able to use this turn also for the effects. You can only use 1 of the following effects, so you can use the tribute effect for the summon of Buster Blader onto the field from the hand or graveyard, or being able to summon it back into the field for that added resource. But still, you have this search and setup depending on what else you may have in your hand for that play, using the card like your Destruction Swordsman fusion with your Buster Blader as well, to then go for the fusion play from the extra deck, summoning out your bigger monster. And then if you have the extra cards in your hand the following turn, you can go for the summon of your dragon monster back onto the field as well. For each dragon monster your opponent controls, though, is the big play. That's why I like to run the DNA Surgery to make all all your opponent's dragon monsters, or monster's dragon, on the field. On top of that, for your monster to then be able to swing into that monster, because it also inflicts piercing bow damage on your opponent's monsters that are in defense position. You have that setup and the additional plays, depending on if you go for your buy-steal monsters, to give you additional dragons as a resource to work with on the field as well for your fusion of your Buster Blader, because a lot of times also you may want to use your Buster Whelps for the added Link monster play also. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira, Twig out.